Hello, Pat. It looks like we're just about ready to start.
All right, can you just give me a bit of a countdown again? Make sure you're hearing me all right. 1, 2, 3, 4. Check, check.
We can hear you fine. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I've got you loud and clear, so ready to Robin.
Okay, and is that that's it. Okay, great. You can hear us in the back. I think we're all ready to go. So, give me a second. Right, everyone over at the bar, can you get a seat if you're going to? And okay, so we've got Pat on the screen here, everybody. Pat is known to most of you. This is Pat Cornwell, and he is one of the founding members of our group here. And he is really best placed to give us a talk on the subject in hand today. Pat is he's let's say he's an aviator through career-wise. He's shown himself as a fabulous property investor, which has been awarded through the industry. But what is Pat is more of a brother to us here in Samui Real, and we're going to start episode number 221 in the bunker with Pat on this subject today. Before we start, a little housekeeping. I think we have a couple of new faces in the crowd tonight. So number one, please make sure you have read the code of conduct up on the wall just over there. And number two, make sure we have, this is for everybody, silenced your phones. So what the format for today is, Pat is going to lead us through a presentation on the subject. Trump, the enigma.
Talk.
And then we're going to we'll have a couple of clips, and that will be followed with some question and answers. So please, let's keep the noise down, the chat down. We've all got opinions on this. Let's leave them until the Q&A at the end. Other than that, I'm going to hand this over to Pat. And once again, let's give him a big hand, everybody.
All right, thanks, everybody. And thanks, Tom. Firstly, just a note of caution. This is a talk more than a presentation, because it's my first time in front of a screen. I've given presentations in the bunker before. It's a little bit different in front of the screen, so I don't have any slides or actual presentation for you. Sorry to disappoint you, but we're just going to run it as a talk. I'm going to give you a few impressions that I've created over probably the last 8 years or so. The subject matter, well, let me give you the title: The Trump Enigma, All the Right Enemies, All the Wrong Friends. The title pretty much does the talking for me, really. So we're just going to expand on a few things there. But first, I want to take you back to 2017, Trump's inauguration speech, right? So we're just going to roll a very quick. I've got a couple of little clips for you. It's a very, very short one. It's only like a minute or two long. So Dennis, if you're ready to, sorry, mate, I think you're just settling down with your beer. If we're ready to roll on that. Now, I just want to give you guys, look, I know not everyone's on the same page when it comes to Trump. There's no more divisive character or figure in the world today. I mean, probably not since 1945, when there was a guy called Hitler running around. Have we had somebody that in the eyes of the media has been so divisive and has emoted so much emotion and animosity? It's now even been coined the Trump derangement syndrome, TDS. So TDS is real. If you find yourself being emotionally challenged or triggered by anything that I say, you have your right of reply at the end. So just try and keep that in mind. Also, with anything that the media project about somebody, usually the opposite is true. So keep that in mind as well. And if you find yourself being emotionally triggered, usually it means you're being played, and you're being played by very professional people at the dark arts of psychological manipulation. All right, Dennis, if you're ready to hit the... Oh, wrong one, dude. So it must have skipped. Go back to the... Yes, okay.
Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. Politicians prospered, but the jobs left and the factories closed. The establishment protected itself, but not the citizens of our country. Their victories have not been your victories. Their triumphs have not been your triumphs. And while they celebrated in our nation's capital, there was little to celebrate for struggling families all across our land. That all changes starting right here and right now, because this moment is your moment. It belongs to you.
Okay. All right. So there's a few points that I'll just let you ponder for now. We'll probably come back to that. But there's a few clues there. In the background, you saw the military guys come up and stand behind him. There was a lot of symbology going on there, and it was a very powerful statement that was being aimed at the enemies of, well, let's call them the people, right? The enemies of the people, which is the establishment, essentially. And the two guys standing directly behind Trump were JAG officers, if you look at the two hats. And they were so military JAG lawyers, essentially. One was a prosecutor and one was a judge, right? Prosecution and judge. So just keep that in the back of your mind, and we'll come back to that a bit later on. So that was 2017, but I want to take you right back to about 2011-12 timeframe now. So pre-political years for Trump, right, which he started running in 2015, election in 2016, and then inauguration in 2017. So around 2011-12, I was into property, and I was writing for a property magazine in Australia, and I was often invited to a lot of the big seminars as a guest speaker, and I was invited to a talk or a seminar in Sydney, 2011-12 timeframe. And one of my biggest, well, I was a Robert Kiyosaki fanboy. I was never a Trump fanboy per se, although Trump kind of was a groundbreaker in property dealings and so on. But Robert Kiyosaki was my idol, if you like, after I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that story. So that set me on a course into property development, acquisition and development. So when Robert was speaking at this conference in around 11-12, he brought over his good mate Donald Trump. I didn't know that at the time. I just wanted to go and see Robert Kiyosaki. Now I got invited to as a because I worked in the media and on the magazine, I got VIP sort of up close and personal access. So I got to see Trump with what would be more like the real Trump in person. We got to meet him as a group. He came and said hello, as did Robert Kiyosaki. Both really good guys, really cool guys, and they're both really good friends because they co-authored books together, at least two, I believe. So that was my early introduction to Trump, and then he gave the closing speech. It was the keynote. I think Robert Kiyosaki was probably the main property guy in terms of the speakers, but Trump gave the closing speech, and it wasn't really about property. It was quite humorous, actually. So my takeaways at the time of Donald Trump was he was a funny guy, right? If we fast forward now through to 2016, 2017 and beyond, up to this day, you see a very different guy, right, in front of the cameras. So that was always curious to me. First of all, why he would go into politics when he did, and the transformation, if you like, of the person that I thought he was. So I was never a Trump fanboy, and I'm not here to tell you today that I am either. That's not the point of this talk. I'm trying to look through the lens of the last 8 years, or actually more, it's probably 12, 13 years, and see what's been going on behind the scenes. So I now see Trump as an actor, right? He's a chameleon. What you're getting across the media, of course, is a total distortion of the truth, right? Total distortion of the truth. So the best people in history have always been given a really bad rap by the media and by history, and some of the worst, let's call them criminals of all time, are regarded as heroes, right? So that's just how the media works, right? That's how the establishment works. So you have to look through that lens to kind of get an idea of where the truth is. So at that time, around 2011-12, Trump being in property, but he was also an actor on the screen in real life. He had his own reality TV show. I don't know if anyone remembers that now. It was called The Apprentice. I think it was one of the all-time biggest, longest running, at least anyway, reality TV shows. I think it ran for about 10 years or so. And my takeaway from that is that's how he learned the role that he's playing now, to be an actor, right? He was groomed or he was trained to do this. We might touch on this point again a little bit later, but I just want to highlight a couple of things that's interesting to me. There have been 3 recent presidents in the last 50 years that have been actors. Is anyone aware of that? Also, counting Trump. Okay, so Trump being the 3rd one. Is anyone aware of that fact? It's kind of interesting, wouldn't you think? Anyone want to put their hand up if they know who I'm talking about?
We got a couple.
One hand. Yeah. Okay.
Harold.
So, who are you going to? I guess I can guess who you're going to say. You're going to say Ronald Reagan, right? So Ronald Reagan wasn't the first one. There was a guy called Nixon before Reagan. Nixon was also an actor, right? He was a lawyer, an actor, and he was also in naval intelligence. And Nixon was in some B-grade movies, I think, pre and post World War II. It's interesting that Nixon and Trump forged a really strong friendship post the Watergate era of 1974-75 timeframe. They became very good friends. So I have a hunch that Nixon schooled Trump in the art of being an actor and how to be a chameleon, how to disappear inside the establishment, so that he remained invisible until now. That's just a personal observation, but it is true that Nixon and he were good friends. We might touch on that later on. There is an interesting phrase that Trump likes to use, and he'll repeat it over and over again. You'll hear it on a lot of media announcements, and he calls people central casting, right? Central casting. So just keep that in the back of your mind as well, because in the course of the rest of this talk, I'm going to make a few suggestions, I guess, or make the statement that we're actually watching a very, very scripted operation unfold here. And it requires central casting, a lot of actors, okay? Just before we move on, I'll just quickly check my notes just to see if I've missed anything important. Well, yeah, so in his time as an actor with the reality TV show, he was incredibly popular, and the media loved him. The pundits loved him. The establishment loved him. Everybody loved him. No, I don't know if anyone's aware or can remember that far back, but that was a fact. He didn't get bad press. He got great press. He had his golf courses everywhere, his casinos. So he was seen as part of the establishment, and on on TV, right in the heart, the belly of the beast, if you want. So that's a really, really good position to come from if you're trying to remain hidden, if you will. That all changed. The media turned on him the moment he started running for politics, right, around 2016 timeframe. So he became public enemy number one in the media and as projected by the establishment through all the political pundits and his political opposition. All right. So there was an interesting about face that took place around 2016. By 2017, he was public enemy number one. And even though the media created, and in some cases, the appearance as reality created this concept or idea that everything was chaotic, was all tumultuous, and there was all this infighting in the Trump administration in the early years. And that's probably true. There was a lot of that going on. So the media were, at every step of the way, were trying to undermine this administration. And that cloud of confusion or chaos was kind of hard to fathom at the time. And that's when I kind of started taking notice. And I thought, what the hell is going on here? Because I knew this guy that I'd seen in person. And then this media development that was happening as he found his feet in politics. So I couldn't understand it. So that's why I started taking notes, if you will, and started studying this phenomena or this the enigma that is Trump. And right around 2017, there was so you had a lot of political upheavals going on, but you had some very big geopolitical upheavals going on. You had the Kim Jong-un spat, right? The Rocket Man thing was blowing up. And that really got my attention. I thought, look, it just seemed like the way that it was being handled just seemed too crazy to believe at the time. But then by paying attention to what was really going on, and then around about that time, 2017, we started getting the what was called the Q posts. It was dropping on initially on the Chans, on 4chan, and then went to 8chan, and then 8kun. And these were anonymous notices that were dropping, and it was kind of explaining the geopolitical and political ramifications of what was going on behind the scenes. So then things started to fall into place, and this whole Rocket Man thing started to make sense. So now, going forward in time, we can see that whole Rocket Man scenario, that all dissipated, and then eventually walked across the border, and they became good mates, supposedly. That same methodology has played out time and time again with supposed arch enemies of Trump, or of at least his administration. All right, so it seems to be like a tactic. So basically, he calls their bluff, and then it all gets exposed, or the situation gets exposed. It blows up, and then it all calms down. And we've seen that repeat over and over a number of times. So I started paying attention to what was really going on, started reading the Q posts, and that's when I started to form a completely different idea I started to look through things, see things through a completely different lens, okay? So what's the plan and all this madness? So you've got the Trump administration and Trump himself. He's surrounded by, as the title says, he's got the worst of friends, right? Or the wrong friends. Now, at first that seemed to be a mistake. And a lot of the pundits that you see around the globe, people like, Kim.com, for example, who I follow, and a few people of his out there have huge followings that completely cannot fathom the methodology of what's unfolding here. And they keep asking, why does Trump keep promoting or putting these people into positions that they shouldn't be in? And on one hand, they've got a point, but on another hand, they're completely missing the strategic objective of this, let's call it an operation, right? So I believe there is a plan. It's a military operation. It's a 3-phase operation. First phase is exposure. The second is disclosure. And the third is the justice phase. Okay? Exposure, disclosure, and justice. So when there was all this talk that when Trump was going to come in, he was going to drain the swamp and all of that, a lot of chatter about that. And that's, I guess, the idea, but that's the smokescreen, right? And Trump himself has used that phraseology and a lot of expectation around draining the swamp. But in essence, the problem is too big, right? Draining the swamp doesn't change anything. And in fact, you can't drain the swamp because all of the institutions are so infiltrated and so captured by the octopus, we'll just call it that for now, that you can't just drain the swamp. So the strategy was never for Trump to come in and sack a few people and put good people in place and try a few people and get them into the court. It was never going to play out that way, right? Because you cannot get justice in an injustice system. You cannot try somebody in a court that was already captured, the DOJ. It was already captured, right? Captured by the deep state. So you got corrupt judges, you got corrupt FBI, you've got corruption everywhere. You're never going to get, you try and drain the swamp, you're never going to get the result that you need. So the objective was never to drain the swamp. That's the smoke screen, right? So that's not what's going on. That's why when you see him surrounded by all these bad people or the wrong people in positions of power, go to phase one, exposure. The strategy is exposure, all right? He's trying to expose to the public. Remember the speech from 2017? This is all about returning the power from the oligarchs and the Congress and a corrupt establishment back to the people. So he's got to get a public mandate to do this. And the way to do that is you've got to show the people, right? So first of all, step one, he's got to expose everything. And you can't do that in a talk or in a speech or anything like that. You have to run a reality TV show, in effect, with the military controlling everything. That's what I'm claiming that we're watching, so that everything is exposed to the public. So then what will follow down the track? So disclosure, which is still to come. We're still in phase one, exposure. When the disclosure phase kicks off, which is the hammer time, it's when the hammer drops, right? People are going to understand the reasons behind it. They're going to know what's going on. And by default, he then has the public mandate to do it and then prosecute let's call them the traitors of the system, all the infiltrators and the traitors of a corrupt system. So that's what he needs. He needs that public mandate. So that's what this is taking so long. And that's why it's so damn painful for those of us who have been away for 8 years or so, or even less. But it's the pain doesn't diminish, but obviously the longer it gets worse. So that's really what's going on. Exposure, disclosure, and justice. And we're still at the exposure stage. But I'm getting a strong sense that we're very, very close to the hammer time where a lot of stuff is going to drop. But before anything can drop, people are talking about the Epstein files and the James Comey indictment when he walked just recently on a technicality. There's good reason why he hasn't been prosecuted yet, because the DOJ, the justice system, it hasn't been cleaned out, right? There's still corrupt judges in place. And like the establishment, all the institutions, they're so beholden or so infiltrated that you're not going to get a result. So basically, he's going to bypass the justice system, and we're going to get military tribunals, right? So the likes of James Comey, who, as I said, got indicted and just walked on a technicality, that's to prove the point. So all through this administration, since 2017, what we're seeing is a series of precedents being set in every arena. Try and count how many times that they think they've got Trump cornered on a legal issue, a technicality, a legal issue, whether it was for his tax returns or for the 4-year special counsel investigation by the FBI. Time and time again, I think it's more than 30 now, where they think they've got him boxed in and he cannot escape, yet he does. So after it's 30-odd-0 now. So the evidence is stacking up that he's actually the one in control. He's playing them. But the reason why he's doing it is because he's got to set all these legal precedents, right, before you can then get to your prosecution. So that's why the justice phase has to come last, and we're still waiting for that. And it won't come until we bypass the corrupt justice system. And we're right at that point, because just the other day, somebody in Washington, D.C., a National Guardsman, she got shot, right? I'm sure you're all aware of that. And so what that has done is triggered a cascading series of events where the National Guard now are being sent out to all states. I don't know if all cities, but all at least troublesome hotspot cities, the National Guard are being put in place. And all this is for good reason, because before the hammer can drop, you've got to have protection in place, right? You've got to have, we're talking about a public mandate that Trump has acquired over this time to build up to this phase, but he's also got to do it in such a way that it's legal, lawful, and it protects the public, okay? So that's probably one of the most highest priorities, is preventing the public from getting hurt. And you've got the George Soros Foundation and so on, funding all of these opposition groups, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and all these MS-13 and so forth, and all these illegal immigrants. They've all been brought into the country to cause chaos and turmoil, but also civil war. The strategy, when they lost control of the election in 2016, their get-out-of-jail card was civil war. That's what they've been agitating for and hoping for by creating this divisive element, Trump against everybody else and so forth, blacks against whites. And the division has been created artificially for them to agitate for civil war. So that's kind of where we're at the minute, and preventing that at all costs is part of why this operation is moving, again, so slowly, so that no red lines are crossed, both in a domestic situation or also in a more sort of geopolitical or international situation. So just to look at the exposure phase, which we're in again, how has this been conducted? So is anyone not aware of what a PSYWAR is, or a PSYOP? Is anyone here that doesn't know what a PSYOP is? Okay. All right, good. So we're on the same page. In 2022, one of the last talks I gave in the bunker there in Samui Real was the Ghosts in the Machine talk. And as a bit of a follow-up for this, here we are sort of three years later, nearly 4 years later. There's been a number of these videos being dropped that are very symbolic by the 4th PSYOP group, which is a military group, I think out of Fort Bragg. And they specialize in PSYOPs, okay? So my point was a military operation, exposure, disclosure, justice. How are they prosecuting this exposure phase? Well, through PSYOPs, because what we're actually in is a what I'd call a counter PSYOP. Okay, we've been PSYOPed our whole life. Each and every one of us that are here tonight, we've been PSYOPed by this establishment in one way or another. Okay, whether you know that or not. So what we're seeing is a counter PSYOP unfold, and we've had numerous clues being dropped, and some of the best ones are from this fourth PSYOP group. So Dennis, if you're there, can you just tee that other one up now, please, the PSYOP? And this is a follow-on from the Ghost in the Machine. I don't know if anyone's not familiar. If not, I'd suggest you look up Ghost in the Machine. You better find them on YouTube or elsewhere.
Damn army.
Do we lose the audio?
There's another force applied in combat that we generally don't think of as a weapon of war. That weapon is words. Words are weapons.
The truth is the only way in which to influence people.
This is psychological warfare.
Okay. Is that audio still going? I can still hear something. Okay. I think it's stopped now. Okay, so again, it's a military, it's a recruiting video essentially, but I would say that's just plausible deniability. I think that's the fourth video, very cryptic video we've seen from the fourth PSYOP group. And what they're trying to do is introduce the idea of PSYOPs are real, and PSYOPs are being played out in real time in the US right now, well, around the world by various governments wherever you are, but particularly in the US right now because of the conflict, if you want, that's going on between Trump and the administration, or not, sorry, not the administration, the establishment, and the fact that you've got the establishment trying to maintain control of the population using PSYOPs, and you've got a counter PSYOP to wrestle back the control, if you want, to break people free from the psychosis. Okay. I won't talk too much more on that. If you want to hear more, you can ask in the questions. So I'm just looking at the time. We're about 8:30. Who are the so in the title of the talk, Trump has the best enemies, right? Who are some of the main enemies in this game? Let's take a look at that. Now, last week, Eamon gave a talk on Eustace Mullins. Did anyone not see that? Is anyone not aware of who Eustace Mullins is? Okay. I highly recommend anything that's produced by Eustace Mullins, either authored or there's a lot of interviews that you can find on YouTube or Rumble or whatever, where he's given interviews, and they're very, very insightful. Now, if you look at Eustace's books, Eustace kind of knew what was going on through his friendship with Ezra Pound and his research. He spent hours and hours in the Library of Congress, I believe. He wrote quite a number of books. If you look at all the titles of his books, he gives the game away, right? The Curse of Canaan, okay? it's about the Canaanites. The world order, which is speaking to the new world order, the globalist operation that's going on at the moment, Agenda 2030, the World Economic Forum, and the New World Order crowd. Secrets of the Federal Reserve. Okay, I don't think I need to say too much more about the Federal Reserve for anyone that's been coming to Samui Real for a while. Murder by injection. Okay, so there's the pharmaceutical crowd, right? The new, I can't even read my own writing. He wrote a book about the Jew. I'm not going to go into this too much because this is another very touchy subject, but he wrote a book about the JEWSs, right? The Jews. I'll leave that one alone. And then he also wrote The Rape of Justice, okay, which is about the corruption or the collapse or the capture of the justice system that I've already spoken to. So Eustace, he's dead now, unfortunately, but he had a pretty good handle on who the enemies of the people were or are or still are. They haven't disappeared. It would appear that they've somewhat lost some of their hold over the country and certainly the headway that Trump has made over the last, let's call it the last 8 years. And they've been unable to dent his enthusiasm to continue to go after them. So that speaks volumes to me, okay? So what have all those titles got in common? To me, the thing that jumps out, even though they're all about very different subjects, the thing that ties them all together is the spiritual component, right? There's a spiritual aspect to this, all right? Ephesians 6:12, if I can just quote the King James Bible for a minute. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against the principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. And that to me is the kind of the key takeaway of where we are in the world today and why what is unfolding, not just in the US, but around the world, but it has to unfold first in the US, because where goes the US, the rest of the world follows. Why what is taking place right now has to happen before the, before we get past the point of no return, all right? I mentioned the Canaanites, the curse of Canaan, all right? That's essentially they're Satan's minions. For a want of a better word to describe it. And they've reappeared through history under different guises. In biblical terms were known as the Canaanites, and down the line through the synagogue of Satan, we've known them as the Phoenicians, the Khazarians, and in some cases the Zionist JEWSs, okay? And that's not a slant on Judaism or Jews, it's just pointing something out here. These are bloodline entities, essentially, that we've been fighting against, or mankind, at least humanity, has been battling against since biblical times, right? I'm not going to go into this in any great detail. You can ask me questions on it later. Suffice to say that the people that are ruling the country in the US right now, and probably in Australia here, and probably where you are in Thailand to lesser or greater extent, they're all controlled by entities. We call them the deep state now, but deep state doesn't really do it justice. The deep state is just an apparatus. But they're controlled by bloodline entities, essentially, that trace their lineage all the way back to Nimrod, right? The mighty man of old, Nimrod, Osiris, or Gilgamesh, the Epic of Gilgamesh. So that's where that's coming from, and that's what they believe. It doesn't matter whether you believe it, that's what they believe, and that gives them power. These groups that are controlling, they pull the strings. They're never the ones that are in the seat of power per se in the public facing arena. They're always controlling from behind. But they believe they've got the divine right to rule, okay? That's just a statement of fact on what they believe. Moving on to the other enemies, and I'll put that as the number one, because really that's the driving force on a very long-range objective, okay? And that's the driving force that keeps that let's call it war against humanity in perpetuation, all right? Number two, I've got the media, all right? And the media, well, actually, number two, let's say I've got the British Empire, the former British Empire, right? And all that that entails, which is the City of London and essentially the Vatican and the Washington, D.C. construct, because that was a British Empire construct, right? That's your empire of three city-states. They are the people that are really controlling using the apparatus of the central bank system, right? The Federal Reserve and the City of London, okay? They fund the media. The media are the air cover for that operation, totally bought and paid for by that operation, okay? So Trump, from day one, has highlighted the media as public enemy number one. In effect, it's not correct, I would suggest, but he can't go to the real number one. So that's been one of the main targets, taking down the media. And we've certainly seen the fall of the corporate media empire, CNN and all of that. Moving on, I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but I think it's a real thing where the corporate media is pretty much dead in this day and age, and most people get their media now from alternative sources, which doesn't always mean that they're any better, because a lot of them are controlled opposition. But at least there's a lot more decentralized media, a lot more different. It's not as centralized, I guess, is the way I'm looking to phrase that. So we've got the other deep state apparatus. In any particular order, I've got Federal Reserve System, which is a central bank system. I'm not going to spend any time on that. There's been a lot of talks in this group already on that. See some of the previous, I think, Tom's talks and a few others, and myself back in the day. So some of the institutions that are run by the Federal Reserve System, that are paid for by the US taxpayer through the Federal Reserve IRS system, in no particular order, the UN, EU, NATO, CIA, and when we touch on the CIA, we're talking about the whole narco, human trafficking, drug trafficking, human misery operation that's worldwide, okay? And we're seeing some of that play out in this day and age very recently, not only the Ukraine situation, but also more recently down in Venezuela. We might come back to that at the end of the talk if we've got more time. But that's a narco trade operation controlled and run by set up and run by the CIA using lily pads, right? Geopolitical lily pads all around the world. Venezuela being one, Colombia, Cuba, Iran was one, Afghanistan, Iraq, you've got Israel, you've got North Korea, or had North Korea. There's still probably a couple of others. And a lot of military bases all around, US military bases all around the world are set up by the CIA as lily pads, okay? Controlled to run various narco operations and a whole lot worse. So that's the enemies. Who are his friends? It's a fairly short list. Some of the friends of note, the ones worth paying attention to, domestically in the US, is the military. Trump controls, let's call it the white hat military, which initially was 200 generals, and it's now 800 to 1,000 generals. He also controls military intelligence. Military intelligence, well, the military have a civilian arm called the NSA, National Security Agency, and that's military controlled as well. They're all friends of Trump. And Trump, a number of times, has made the claim that they have everything. And through the NSA, which is, again, is military controlled, they do have everything. They have everything on the CIA, and they have everything on all the dirty politicians, right? So all the strings that are being pulled around the world by the deep state till now, those strings are in the hands of the, let's call it the white hat military. And I'll give you one of the best examples of that is in 2017, the first overseas trip that Trump made was to Saudi Arabia, okay? And just after his trip, so while he was in Saudi Arabia, he was given the sword dance, right? After he left, there was a coup d'etat that took place in Saudi Arabia where I think Al-Walid bin Talal, I think is his name, Alawid anyway, Prince Alawid was arrested, and about 200 other high-ranking Saudis were arrested, and then supposedly have been prosecuted and haven't been seen in public since. And since that time, MBS bin Salman has now become the head guy under the king for Saudi, and he was recently in the US and he met with Trump. But what was really notable was when Trump went over to Saudi just recently, the reception that he received from the Saudis. It was treated, he had the full ceremony, procession and everything, as if he was a king himself. So that's how they regard him, because he was instrumental in setting up that coup d'etat where the, let's call it the Black Hat Prince, was overthrown with and then replaced with MBS. All right. So MBS is another one of his friends, and we can see that being demonstrated in the public. I would make the claim that Xi and also Putin are allies, if not friends, personal friends of Trump's also. I made that claim, and I can back it up with one of the early Q posts that state, and I quote, "What if China, Russia, and others I take to mean now MBS, bin Salman, are coordinating with POTUS to eliminate the New World Order?" Okay. That post was just reposted or requoted, I think today, by the Putin's special envoy, okay, a guy called Kirill Medvedev. All right, he reposted or reposted on X that Q post. And this guy, I don't know if anyone has heard of Kirill, but he's a guy, Medvedev is a guy worth following because he's very, very close to Putin. And he's, right as we speak now, he's meeting in Moscow with Trump's team. A couple of the Secretary of State, the State Department guys are over there now talking about the peace deal with the Ukraine. So this is a guy who's very close to Putin. Who's reposting Q posts, and he's also reposts a lot of Trump posts as well. So I'm making the connection there. Go and look into it yourself. I highly recommend you do. It's very interesting that we've got, as we speak, the collapse of the Ukraine, and soon to be probably a peace deal being made, and the spool up of something going on in Venezuela. I'm just going to mention this briefly. We're not going to get into it, maybe in the questions if you want to know more. But it's very timely. I talked about the lily pads. Ukraine was a lily pad for a lot of nefarious operations. Venezuela is a narco lily pad. These lily pads are being isolated and shut down one by one, not just by Trump, but by his allies. Putin, being an ally of Trump, has shut down the Ukraine lily pad, right? They're running out of places to operate out of. And I'd say they're running out of funds and they're running out of runway, okay? So we're in a time now where things are speeding up. And I think when Venezuela does fold, you've got Maduro now suggesting to Trump publicly that he should get hold of the FBI files out of Colombia on what's really been going on, because it's believed that a lot of the servers for Smartmatic and Dominion are run out of Venezuela, as well as the narco stuff, right? So when the hammer drops, I think with that disclosure phase coming into view, you're going to see a lot of stuff coming into the public arena out of Venezuela. That's just my guess. And I think it's going to happen pretty soon. So watch for that. Looking at the time, I think we kind of need to do a bit of a pause, and we can touch on any other subjects that are of particular interest in the questions, I think, because there are other things that I want to cover, but I think we're going on too long. So let's call it quits for now with me talking, and I'll turn it over to you guys. So if anyone's got any questions or wants to recap or voice their opinion, now's your chance.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's great. We got Sam back again. Pat, thank you. That was an absolutely fabulous and intriguing show. You know that I've followed a lot of what you've been saying, and one of the connections there that you made was the NSA being military funded. So that makes a lot of things make sense to me now. Anyway, we're throwing this over to questions. I'm sure we've got a lot of questions. Please, everybody, let's make sure these are questions. We've all got lots of opinions on these subjects. So keep the questions short and tight, and we'll go from there. Okay, thanks. Let's first of all, and anybody on Zoom, please make sure you send in your questions, and we'll get Dennis to or me to read them out. Okay, hands up in the bunker. Marianne.
Hello. You didn't mention this assassination attempt. What do you think about this? Is he an actor, or was it acted, staged? What do you think?
Trump assassination or the Charlie Kirk? So we're talking about the Trump assassination attempt, yeah?
The Trump assassination.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Look, I guess it doesn't really. It's hard to be definitive about it. What do I really think? I think it was a psyop. I know for a fact that way before 2020, so in the 2017-18 timeframe, or 2017 to 19, there were lots of unverified by the media stories, doesn't make them not true, of multiple assassination attempts on Trump. They're obviously unsuccessful. Well, we assume they're unsuccessful, right? I think this latest go round, there were too many tells that it was a psyop. And look, to me, it doesn't make any difference. I know they tried to assassinate him, but he survived. And I think they wanted to bring that into the public awareness in a way that was very controlled, that whether someone actually got killed or not, I'm not 100% sure on that. But remember, psyops are pretty convincing. The same as the Charlie Kirk assassination. I'm not convinced that that was a real assassination. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. I don't want to have a strong opinion on it. I'm of the opinion that pretty much everything we're seeing is a psyop of some kind.
Thanks, Marianne. More questions from the bunker.
Sorry, who was the guy that was close to Putin? Kirill, what was his surname?
Dmitriev. He's on X. Dmitriev. Tom, I don't know if you can.
I can share that to his.
Show that to them later on. You'll find him very easily. He's special envoy to Putin. He spends quite a bit of time in the US. He speaks English very well. He's very conversant. He's very. You don't need translation to. He writes in English. He is very much on board with this operation that I've been describing to you. The stuff that he posts, he directly quotes or he reposts Trump stuff, and he directly posts Q posts. So, just without knowing anything else, there's a message to take away from that, right? There's a lot of misunderstanding between Trump and Putin. You know, I'm claiming they're allies, and I'm also claiming they're very good friends, but they cannot be seen in public to be good friends. Trump had to survive 4 years of the Russia collusion hoax, okay? That was the Democrat funded hit job using the Steele dossier, which is a total fabrication. That's been proved beyond doubt now. That was a fabrication using people like John Brennan and what was Hillary Clinton's funded operation. Now, because of that claim, the essence of that claim was that Trump was colluding or being controlled by Putin. Trump has to create distance between himself and the guy that he's been accused of collaborating with. So he can't be seen to be best mates in public. But if you read between the lines with what Kirill is showing us, they're on the same page, and they're very, very tight. Okay.
I think Pat's has a question here as well.
Thanks a lot, Pat. That was excellent. Just a simple question. You mentioned the 3 stages: exposure, disclosure, and justice. Yeah. So
Right.
I hear rumors like supposedly in 2008, Obama, the first executive order he supposedly signed was the closing of Guantanamo Bay. So going to your theory on the 3 stages, the justice stage, the rumors of Trump expanding in Guantanamo Bay, are they true in your opinion? And if so, to what end?
Well, yeah, okay, good question. Yeah, I believe they're true. And no, I say that not just as speculation. If you go and look at the satellite maps of the compound, it's increased in size, I think about tenfold. And I've forgotten what the number is, but it was at least $500 million was spent on Guantanamo post 2017. Okay, I don't know exactly when the development was extended, but Trump rallied in 2016 on the premise that he was going to keep Guantanamo Bay open, and Biden rallied. In 2016 it was Hillary. Okay, Hillary rallied on the premise that it was going to be shut down. All right, and it was very interesting. One of the in a live debate that he had with Hillary in 2016 on this subject, the microphone caught his reply that he replied under his breath. So he gave a verbatim answer, and then he did a under his breath answer as well that the microphone picked up. And you better find it on YouTube. And so he said, "I'm going to keep it open for you." Under his breath, the microphone picked it up. So in other words, he was threatening Hillary Clinton with Guantanamo Bay. So absolutely, it's still open. Biden was supposed to have shut it down. He didn't when he supposedly ran the country for 4 years in 2020 to 2024. And in that time, the size of the compound only expanded. Now, if you look at FlightAware, any of the flight apps, there's massive amounts of flights in and out of Guantanamo Bay, daily flights from Washington, D.C., and a number of other military bases going on all the time, and even some international flights going directly into Guantanamo Bay. So you tell me nothing's going on in Guantanamo Bay, and I beg to differ. I mean, I'm not saying you are saying that, but if anyone does say that, I beg to differ. The evidence supports that there is quite a few personnel down there, and there's certainly some operation going on down there. And to that point, in Trump's rallies, I don't know if anyone watched any of his rallies, he always closed out his rallies with YMCA. Has anyone seen that or aware of that? Right? YMCA. Guantanamo Bay, before it became a US military base, when they took it over, was a YMCA. What do you reckon the message is? I'll leave you to ponder that. But my guess is that he's trolling these elites that are all going to face their judgment or their justice in the YMCA, which is Guantanamo Bay, right?
Great, that's interesting, Pat. Thanks. And we've got a question at the back from somebody who you will be delighted to answer, from Andy. Do you have a microphone, Andy?
Pat, your biggest fan, the only one to speak my language. All right. To finish off this presentation, I think spend a little time on the Q. And who the hell is Q plus?
Oh, is that the question?
Yeah,
Andy, is that the question? Who is Q plus? Andy, you've just gone quiet. Is that the question?
that is the question. Could you speak?
All right. So Q plus is Trump. Q plus is Trump. And And last week, about a week ago, there's an artist, Patriot Street Fighter is his ex-handle name, I think, from memory. He's an artist, and he created some artwork, very, very cool stuff. And he posted it, and one of them had Trump himself with "Nothing can stop what's coming," which is a Q maxim or phrase. But on his lapel was a Q plus, right? And Trump reposted that post himself, of himself being identified as Q plus. So a lot of symbology there, right? Kirill Dmitriev reposted that same post as well. So he's basically adding himself as Q plus. Okay.
Okay, we've got one more question from the back, and I've got a question after that before we go to Zoom.
Hey, Pat, great talk. Thank you very kindly. Can you speak briefly about the Epstein files and all the photos of Trump and Jeffrey Epstein together? And do you think he's implicated in this and he has to kind of release it slowly? It's been a bit of a shit show. Loudly. And so does this have to play out with disclosure very slowly, or because of who is implicated, like Bubba and Bill Clinton comments coming out a week or two ago? Where does it fit as a puzzle piece into the whole bigger picture?
Is that Jeff? Who was that?
Yeah, Jeff.
Oh, Jeff. Yeah, g'day, Jeff.
How you going?
Hey, yeah, good question. Look, it is an orchestrated litany of lies, essentially. It is a shit show, and there's a reason for that. A couple of things to back up a little bit. In 2016-17, when Hillary lost the unlosable election, they had to concoct some really damaging stuff on Trump to take him out. And they had the 4-year FBI special counsel investigation. If there was anything, any dirt at all on Trump, the special counsel would have unearthed it, and he would have been, it would have ended his first term presidency, guaranteed. If they found any dirt on him, whether it was Epstein related or other, nobody could survive a 4-year FBI investigation if there was some secrets to hide. And then from 2000 and early 2000s, in the early prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein, the FBI are on record as saying Trump was the only guy that came forward and passed on information about Jeffrey Epstein when he got prosecuted in around 2008 timeframe, somewhere around there, okay? And Epstein himself confesses to that and actually called Trump the dog that didn't bark, okay, which is kind of a slang way of saying that he was a dog act. Trump dobbed him into the FBI, which I believe is the case, because Epstein was doing some of his operation out of Mar-a-Lago. He was recruiting young girls out of Mar-a-Lago, and Trump put a stop to that. He could ban them from Mar-a-Lago. So then they had because supposedly they were friendly at that time. There's no record of Trump going to Epstein Island. There is record of him traveling on what they call the 727, the Letter Express, but that's just between I think Florida and DC. So a lot of people traveled with that circle in those days. So I don't think there's anything there. If there was a there, it would have come out. Why is Trump dragging his feet on this whole thing? That's the main thing to focus on, because he wants this to be the mother of all bombs when it drops. So he's holding out on it because, one, he knows that the actual Epstein file, as it's been bandied about by let's say the corrupt side of the FBI and the Democrats, that's the fake dossier. There's a fake Epstein dossier. There's the real stuff the NSA has, and that's way worse than the Epstein files that the FBI have, and supposedly that they are begging for Trump to release. So I believe that he will release it. He is basically getting them to demand their own execution. So he's basically playing poker, and he's bluffing for them to go all in. The moment they go all in, he'll play the trump card, and then it will be so big, such a big deal, They will not be able to spin it. The media will not be able to cover for them. It will be in the cold light of day. They're exposing the real people that were involved. And that's the hammer that's still to come. Okay, so that's what I believe he's dragging his feet on it. He's basically playing poker with them, and he wants them to go all in. And once they're all fully committed, they can't back out of it, right? So he's basically wrapped himself in around this idea that he's tainted by the Epstein files, and he's gone along with that because he knows that they will pull that, they will want to play that card, and he's happy for them to play that card.
Thanks, Pat, and thanks, Jeff. I've got a very quick question. It's almost on the tip of my tongue there as you were talking, but I can't ask when will this come to a head. That's the question that we all have to wait for. But the question I'd like to ask instead is, how long have you been waiting for this?
Too long. 8 years. Since so when I wind the clock back to 2017, that's when I started paying attention to the Trump political theater, right? 2017, and that's when the Q post started coming out. So that's what cued me in, excuse the pun, to what's really going on as opposed to the theater, the kabuki theater that we're seeing play out. Okay, so yeah, it's been a long 8 years. The timing, we can't know the timing. I've got a feeling that just with recent geopolitical events, the Ukraine thing kind of collapsing for the cabal, and the collapse of NATO. NATO had a meeting today or yesterday, and no US representative turned up. They've pulled the funding. So all those institutions, the UN is probably on the chopping block as well. They've had their funding pulled. The EU is in a mess. We've got the dollar, let's call it the fiat currency crisis unfolding with the Japan yen carry trade unwinding. We've got the silver spiking through $60 just today, yesterday. All these are barometers or indicators that the financial system, which is the cabal operating system, is collapsing, right? So when that collapses, you know that's the time, because everything's going to go at once. Right, we've got a clean house everything, financially, justice, so economic justice, education, science, everything has to have a broom go through it, right? And it's all going to come at the same time. Call it a reset. We're going to have a reset.
From Andrea.
Thank you. You talked about the preparation of the public opinion, then the disclosure, and then the judgment. I suppose that there are thousands of people to be judged worldwide. Will they go to prison for lifetime, waiting for the death sentence, which will take 30 years as well? Or will there be any game organized by the public? Who shoots first the prisoners? How will they manage all that?
Okay. So what I know that is fact in the public arena, there's more than 750,000 sealed indictments, nearly 1 million sealed indictments. So that's at least the starting number of who's going to get prosecuted. Now, apparently you can have up to 29 people attached to one indictment. The indictment methodology is what they used to wrap up the mafia back in I think it was the 80s, the New York mafia families and so on. And they used this methodology of sealed indictments, because if you arrest the first person on day one, everybody else disappears and you can't find them. So what they do is they basically prosecute them in absentia under a sealed indictment, and then drop the hammer and they arrest everybody at the same time. So nobody has any advance warning. So when you ask for a number, well, it's got to be at least 750,000, probably upwards of probably a few million, I would say, worldwide. One of the first things that Trump and his administration did in the first term is they brought back the death penalty for capital crimes in the US. I can't speak to other countries, but I think a lot of people will be prosecuted under military tribunal not necessarily in the US, because the military tribunals can be held in places like Guantanamo Bay and a few other places as well. But they have the ability for capital crimes, for treason, for example, or crimes against humanity, serious crimes against humanity, to execute. That's been brought back in. And I think that scared the shit out of a lot of people when they did that, because they know that this phase is coming. Once they saw that inauguration speech with the Trump military standing behind him, the two JAG officers, the prosecutor and the judge, advocate, whatever they call it, I can't remember the terminology. That was a clear signal that the day is coming, right?
Okay, thanks, Pat. Dennis here again from Awakening and Health. A couple of questions on Zoom for you. The first question is as follows. What do you think happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, and also the Charlie Kirk event, which you mentioned briefly?
Charlie Kirk event, I think, was a psyop. I don't have any clear evidence of it. That's just my take on it. And either way, I don't really have a dog in the fight. Everything we're being shown is a psyop. There's different objectives. I don't know whose psyop it is. I don't even want to guess, but I don't think it's real. I mean, I believe it's a psyop. I don't know what happened to him, but it was a staged event. That's all I really can speak to on the Charlie Kirk thing. The Butler, Pennsylvania, just refresh my memory. What was the Butler thing? What was the event? What happened in Butler? Well, that was the Trump assassination.
Attempted assassination of Trump, apparently, yeah.
Yeah, well, again, my gut feeling is a psyop. There's too much about it that appears scripted and layered. What I mean by layered is that there's a whole lot of different groups of actors moving around in the background that all seem to know what they're doing at different times. So it was rehearsed or coordinated. Again, I do believe that there were multiple real assassinations on Trump's life. And I believe to bring that into the exposure stage, the public awareness, they ran a scripted scenario where no one, well, certainly Trump doesn't get assassinated. That's just my take on it, a gut feeling. But
Thanks, Pat. We've got another quick question. There are some key dates next year, World Cup in the USA and 250-year celebration around June and July. The hammer could fall before these dates. What are your thoughts?
definitely 100% before the July 2026 is the 250. There's a big military, well, and civilian celebration, a big US celebration planned for that day. So I believe that will be done as a celebration of kind of like a victory in this battle as well. I think it's been set up for that. If I was scripting it, that's how I would be scripting it. The World Cup, that's a sporting event. Obviously, there's a lot of attention on that as well. They'll certainly ensure that the country has been put in a safe place by then. But I think the 250th July 2026 is the finish line date.
And I think we've got one last question from Victor.
Hi, Pat.
Hey, Vic.
Great to see your face.
Thanks, mate.
Just a question about timeline. You said you've been waiting for the hammer to fall for 8 years. And you said you have a hunch that it might be coming soon, right?
Right.
Now, Trump only has 3 more years. And at this stage, as it looks, he cannot be elected for another term. So can this whole thing be reversed so the hammer is not going to fall? I mean, we're talking about 3 years.
Can it be reversed? You mean, can it be stopped? Is that what you're asking?
Can it be stopped, I guess. Yeah. And the deep state getting back in action.
Okay. Well, I would say to you that Trump is just the point man on a military operation. It doesn't really matter. His job is done by the time the next 3 years is up, regardless. So I'm not going to say he's going to stay on longer. He apparently there is a process where he can stay on longer because of the election interference in 2020. If they overturn that election, that would give him, I believe, that gives him another term. I'm not anyway. But it's neither here nor there. Can they reverse it or stop it? No, I believe we're way past the point of no return. It is a military operation. The military are controlling things behind the scenes. It doesn't matter whether Trump is still there or not. He's the public face that had to sell this to the public to get the public mandate. Okay, I think he's done that job pretty much, and he will be there until it's kind of wrapped up. Beyond that, when I say we're going to have a reset, there's basically a controlled demolition taking place, slowly at first, and then all of a sudden. In that controlled demolition, we're going to see the collapse of the financial system, the economic system, the justice system, the health system, and every other system that there is, and they're going to reset everything. And you're going to see a lot of decentralized technology coming into play that will basically future-proof the system of systems to prevent this sort of thing happening again. You're going to see the blockchain come in, not only to the financial side of things, but also on the voting side of things and so forth. You're going to have the disappearance of banks and the middlemen. Okay, so a lot of the problems that are created, well, first of all, where the money, the wealth is stolen from the people, and then the control mechanism to put in place is through the banking system, right? Through the central bank thing. The banks aren't going to disappear completely, but they're going to disappear from that position of control, and we're going to go to decentralized finance. By and large, I mean, we're still going to have institutions, but a lot of it is going to be done with decentralized nodes, peer-to-peer, and the disappearance of the middlemen. So this will make it very, very hard for a cabal, a financial cabal, which is basically what they are, to hijack the system again, okay? That's where I believe we're going when the system crashes. We're going to future-proof using distributed ledger technology, okay?
Excellent. Thank you, Pat. And one final one from Zoom. Hey, Pat, thanks so much for the talk. Could you speak to Trump's actions, Ari, in relation to Israel and his comments on Gaza, etc.?
Yeah, okay. So that's a tricky one. The Israel question is very, very complex, and I can't do it justice with a quick, simple answer that you're going to be satisfied with. What I know of the situations, remember I talked about the lily pads. So Israel was I call it a phony state created. It's another lily pad created by the cabal in 1948, okay? So it's a cabal to run, it's a launch pad or a lily pad to run a lot of their nefarious activities through Mossad and through narco stuff and IT technology and through let's call it nuclear energy technology. There's kind of a bit of a thing about that. So that was if you go back to the JFK assassination, a lot of that was tied to Mossad and the fact that JFK didn't want them to get the bomb. Okay, there's a thing about the bomb. So Israel acquired the bomb unwittingly, or they did it by stealth. JFK was going to expose that. They shot him before he could. What that's about now is that Israel have the bomb, and they have this thing called the Samson option. Okay, the Samson option is from the biblical reference where Samson collapses the temple down on himself, right? If anything was ever to happen to Israel as a state, they were going to exercise the Samson option, and just that's their threat. That's not that's in the public arena. You can go and look that up. So that was the threat hanging over anyone that tried to attack Israel in a meaningful way, anyone that was a superpower, that is. So that threat has to be disarmed. Okay, it's basically a dead man switch. So Trump can't go through the front door and attack Israel. He has to play nice with Israel until right up until the point where he doesn't have to. And I don't know if we're at that point yet or not, but that's to prevent the Samson option. So Trump needs to have the people of Israel on his side. So he can't do anything that disrespects the people as the same as he needs to have a mandate for his own people. His war is against the deep state or the cabal, not against Israel. The cabal hold Israel hostage. It's a captured operation. It's a lily pad operation with this nuclear thing, the Samson option, hanging over them. So that has to be disarmed and dismantled before he can go in the front door. Okay, so that's what a lot of this tiptoeing about Israel is about. Why Trump appears to be not besties, but on good terms with Netanyahu and so on, is he has to up until the point where he doesn't have to anymore. Bet you bottom dollar, they're not friends, they're not allies. They are diametrically opposed in this battle, as is Xi and Putin are diametrically opposed as well. But they can't take their battles public because the threat of something going bang is too great, right? I don't know if that does it justice. It's a very complicated situation. In the Q posts, it mentions several times that they're saving Israel to last. It's the last domino to fall. So it's going to be the last lily pad that gets collapsed. Okay.
Okay, thanks. Dennis, can you tell us who that question was from? From Annabelle, thanks. Okay.
Jay. Yeah,
I'm going from Jay.
I know you want to wrap it up real quick. The dead man's hand. So Putin's got one of those as well, right? You were talking
the dead man's switch.
Yeah, like there's a nuclear sort of exchange that'll be all over. And your previous question, the previous question to that, talking about decentralized banking, you didn't mention Bitcoin at all. And also one more, because I've been running them up. Epstein and Trump. Do you not think that Trump didn't release Epstein files because he was like, excuse the pun, balls deep?
Okay. Well, just to answer them in a reverse order, the Epstein thing, remember I just covered that same question before, so you've kind of been listening. If there was any there with Trump and Epstein, it would have come out in the special counsel 4-year investigation on Trump. All right. If there was any dirt on Trump, whether it was Epstein related or not, it would have come out before. There's no way you can survive a 4-year FBI investigation into every little detail of your life. All right. And he's on record as being the only one that cooperated with the FBI when Epstein was prosecuted the first go round. That was back in the mid 2000s. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. And it's on record that Trump was the only guy that approached the FBI. He didn't wait. He picked up the phone and called the FBI and said, I've got information for you. Can we talk? All right. He became I guess an undercover witness, if you want, for the FBI on the Epstein case. Epstein then got tried, prosecuted, and he went away for about 2 years. It was only a short time, and then was released again. So that was the whole Epstein thing blew up around about 2018, 2019. That's the second time around, if you want. He's already been prosecuted once. Trump was the only guy that was cooperating with that investigation. So I don't think there's a there with Trump. And second of all, it's the NSA have everything. They have all the dirt on everybody, and they have the real dirt on the Epstein Island, what went on the Epstein Island. That's all in the Q posts. In 2018, before the Epstein file, which is a creation of the Democrats, before that file came to the surface and started circulating publicly, and before the media even knew, well, anybody following the media knew about this guy Epstein, Epstein had already hired a concrete cement mixer boat. It cost $20 million, I believe, and had been out to the island, and they'd filled up all the tunnels on the island with cement. This was around just after Trump came into power. So all the signs are there that Epstein was covering his tracks when Trump came in to the top job, right? He'd been banned from Mar-a-Lago, as I mentioned earlier. He was cooperating with the FBI. He survived the FBI special counsel. Dude, if there was a there, it's got to be the most protected there that, you know, it's just it's implausible that he's tied up with that. It really is. And the symbolism of Epstein filling his island full of cement in 2018, but it was already after the Q Post had released the film or photographic footage of the cameras in these underground bunkers, basically on the island. There's all of the different levels. All of the bunkers were wired with cameras, and someone had hacked the system, the network, and downloaded the pictures. Right? These are all on the Q Post. So that information's been in the public arena, and it was Q that's brought it to the public attention well before the media. No, if I've made the case that Trump and Q are one and the same, well, Trump is Q plus, he's not going to out himself. You know, that makes no sense. So I think I've covered every possible angle that you've kind of thrown up. And if you still don't believe it, then I think you're buying a narrative that's created by the media, and you're just going to have to, like the rest of us, wait and see how this plays out. Because I don't know what else to tell you.
Okay, well, I think we've just about come to an end now. So wrap it up. And Pat, that's been an absolute fantastic. Sorry, pardon me. Wait a minute. This has been an absolutely fantastic talk. But we have one question still left to come from Pat.
Sorry, Pat. Yeah, again, everybody, another round of applause, please, for Pat. It was a brilliant talk. Thank you so much.
Again, I remind everyone, Ghosts in the Machine, look it up.
We will.
What we're seeing now is Ghosts in the Machine.
And so I just take this opportunity as well, everyone, and Pat, to thank Dennis O'Connor from Awakening in Health, because he does all the video, all the technical.
Thanks, Dennis.
And he edits everything and puts it out, and we will put this out. Right, Dennis? Thank you. So the last question. So I just want to clear up just for myself and for everyone in the group, in the room. So before, you mentioned 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, live in the bunker, you talked and you showed us photos of Washington, D.C., showing federal buildings boarded up.
Right.
So before, you mentioned the deep state is merely an apparatus. You mentioned that Trump is merely the point man for the military. You talked about 2 years ago, we talked about the Square Mile, the City of London Corporation, financial institution. We talked about the Vatican having its finger on the pulse of the peoples of the planet. And we talked about federal, Washington, D.C. being the military arm. Is that correct? Yeah.
Correct. Yes.
And then today you mentioned Trump, you mentioned the deep state. So you mentioned the 3 phases. So exposure, disclosure, and justice. Okay. But you also mentioned the bloodlines, the 13 bloodlines. So in your opinion, when Trump carries out the final stage, the judgment, do you think that he will not only bring down the cabal or the globalist or whatever, only in the US, but potentially the City of London, Vatican, Washington, D.C., all of these as a result of Trump's backing by the military, of Trump's actions, could actually dismantle the entire global cabal system? Is that what you're suggesting?
I am. The disclosure will take care of itself. Once you disclose the level of corruption that's endemic across all those institutions, they cannot survive. They cannot survive in their current form. There may be some restructuring going on. The Federal Reserve, the City of London, the Vatican, and Washington, D.C. as a construct as it is now, they cannot survive in their current form. So there's a reset of those institutions coming. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, it's a good thing.
And yeah, it will be global. The justice phase will be global as well, because there'll be military tribunal, so that overrides our jurisdiction. They'll be tried if there's serious crimes.
And as usual, we like to finish these sessions with an uplifting message of hope. I was wondering if you had one.
Trump just tweeted out military tribunals just in the last few days. So there's the hope. There's tribunals coming to a TV screen near you soon. I would imagine some of them will be public, will be televised. I would say, at least some parts of it will be. So that's what we're building up for. The disclosure phase and justice is not far away.
So a lot of us here are waiting very patiently for these things to happen, and it touches us all in all the different spheres of our lives. And thank you, Pat, once again for introducing all of us to this subject.
You're welcome, guys. Nice to see everybody.
Okay.
Everyone's looking well.
And we're going to take this now to the front, and I wish you were here. That's all I can say.
We'll have a beer for you at the front.
Yeah, have a beer for me, guys. I've got a well, I finished and I've got to get a glass of red wine on the go here. So good to see everybody.
Yep, good to see you. Thank you so much, and thank you everyone on Zoom for tuning in tonight. It's great, a very good turnout tonight. So thank you. So
thanks everybody.
Okay, we'll catch up with you soon, Pat. Thank you very much, and good night.
All right, I'm just going to actually just leave the screen on for a sec. I just want to reply to a couple of messages.
Okay,
Janice,
sure.
if you just leave it up for a sec.
Okay, thank you.
Cheers, Pat.
Cheers, Pat. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. I just quickly typed a couple of replies there to all good, mate. You can shut it down if you want. Nighty night.